rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. You know, yesterday, and actually it kind of covered a couple of days, a conversation, well, we'll just call it more of a disagreement. I mean, I could call it an argument, but whatever. A disagreement with an individual on Facebook has inspired this tonight's topic. However, I do have some backup stuff that I can go through in terms of some of the articles and stuff. So if we get through this topic really, really quickly, which I'm hoping that we don't, because I'm hoping to cover it completely, you know, as much as I can. But there's a lot of context and a lot of historical significance to the idea of who the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, is actually supposed to apply to. Who actually gets covered. Now, if you talk to the leftists of this country, and pretty much many people since the turn of the century, meaning the 20th century, because they've been taught this in class, even though I believe it is actually incorrect, that the U.S. Constitution applies to everyone that is within our borders. And I think that's wrong. Because historically speaking, people who had the U.S. Constitution apply to them were only people who assigned themselves to be Americans. And I'm going to show you and demonstrate to you that there is a serious case to be made that the United States Constitution does not apply to just anyone who happens to be physically within our borders. But before we get to that, of course, we got to go through our Pledge of Allegiance. And so tonight's Pledge of Allegiance is up by G. That's right. G. G's pledge is up for tonight. So if you are of mine, please stand. Remove your hat if you're wearing one like me. Place your hand over your heart and follow along with G as he recites the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And, of course, I thank you, G, for that wonderful rendition of the pledge. If you would like to hear your rendition of the pledge played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself reciting or performing the pledge in your style. Take that audio file, video file, whatever kind of file, and attach it to an email. Send it off to me. Send it to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online, and I will get you into the rotation. Also, don't forget, if you do it on your phone, apparently you can record yourself and then use the share option on your phone, and that'll do the same thing. It'll allow you to type in an email address and send it off to me at fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. And I will get you into the rotation. I've got 20 right now. I'd love to see 21, 22, 23, 24, etc. As quick as humanly possible. All right. Tonight's headline sponsor, of course, is the Institute on the Constitution. Apropos that we're going to be talking about this tonight. But the Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission, and that is to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government, as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.americanperspective.online, to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.americanperspective.online. To get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.americanperspective.online, or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.americanperspective.online. Take a look at this wonderful book. Got 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are water and tear resistant. No cheap glue binding here. This is stitched all the way through. The leather and the pages contained within. It's got a 100-year warranty against materials and manufacturing defects, such that if there is a problem, you can send it back to the manufacturer and they will either replace it, repair or replace it for free. There we go. Finally got that out. 3 Chevy says each book proudly uses genuine Roman numerals in actual numerical order. And Ms. T of Tech says that the stitching is so good that Hawkeye Pierce used it in MASH. Okay, that's some fantastic stuff from my Whiskey Warrior P1s over on Rumble. It is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved, and my youngest Whiskey Warrior has confirmed that the information contained within will help you to study for your civics badge in Scouts, as well as your civics exam if you still have it, or your naturalization test. You can do that too. Grab one of these today, stick it in a stocking for your loved ones, the ones that you really care about, or maybe even the ones that you don't like. I don't know. Either way, go and get yours today by going to constitution.americanperspective.online and go and check out the rest of the Institute on the Constitution's offerings. And I thank them for allowing me to be a brand affiliate. All right, really quick, before we get to On This Day in American History, I am drinking from a new bottle of something new. Hopefully Bonnie approves of this, because it is a Kentucky a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, very small batch. It's called Jefferson's Reserve. And, yeah, so there you go. That's what I've got in the glass. And, of course, the glass tonight is a great gift by the Whiskey Warrior P1s. The glass where it says it takes stones to drink with whiskey. And, of course, the bottom is got the stones in it right there in the bottom. Fantastic. Requisite first sip. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say it's probably in the same realm or lines as like the Four Roses and the Buffalo Trace. I won't say they're similar in taste, because they're not, but it's definitely in that realm, so I could probably drink it again. And at the same time that I picked up this bottle today, I also picked up Four Roses and picked up a new bottle of Four Roses and Buffalo Trace to replace the ones that I'm about ready to finish. So anyway, I'm going to say it's a little expensive, the Jefferson's Reserve, but you know, one of the things that Landman, the television show Landman, advertises or has advertisements for Jefferson's bourbon. And I took a look at the Jefferson's bourbon. Now, it's not Kentucky, it's not straight Kentucky bourbon. It's just bourbon, which means it's made somewhere outside of Kentucky. And this was sitting right next to it. So I kind of fudged and grabbed this one instead. Anyway, it's not that bad. But like I said, it is a little expensive, so it's probably just going to be a splurge for me. Anyway. All right, so let's get on to the first segment for tonight, which of course is On This Day in American History. And of course, for On This Day in American History, I don the teacher glasses and we read from the American Patriots Almanac, written by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. Chock full of all kinds of interesting factoids. Look at this. We're almost done. Almost done with the book. And then we have to start over for that. So anyway. Yeah, Bonnie, the double oak was sitting there. I thought about it. I did. I seriously thought about it. Yeah, I'll get that next time. The double oak, reserve double oak. They did have it there though, which is cool. So, but anyway, so yeah. And, 3 Chevy asks, which one's better, Four Roses or Buffalo Trace? You know what? They're both, I'm going to say, so for me, the Four Roses, especially the single barrel that I get, that's of a higher quality than just the plain Buffalo Trace. But in terms of the taste, the Buffalo Trace doesn't have quite the same spicy after flavor that, say, Four Roses does. Now, both of them are good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we're kind of playing in the field where I kind of like all three, but yeah, it's definitely not. I can't really say one is better than the other. It just depends on personal preference, in my opinion. But anyway. All right. Yeah, and Redneck Riviera, Nana of JJS points out, Redneck Riviera is another one. I haven't tried the grandma version yet, which is supposed to be like the reserve version of the Redneck Riviera, but that's another one that's I would say pretty good for it. So anyway, all right, let's move on and talk about the National Guard. Oh, I got a comment or two on this one. Anyway, the National Guard is the oldest part of our nation's armed forces, tracing its roots to the time when the 13 original English colonies required able-bodied male citizens to train and be ready to defend their communities. The Guard observes December 13th as its birthday because on that day in 1636, the Massachusetts Bay Colony organized scattered militia companies from villages around Boston into 3 regiments. Now, Articles 1 and 2 of the United States Constitution lay down guidelines providing for the National Guard. Today's Guard is made up of more than 460,000 men and women, businessmen, factory workers, teachers, doctors, police officers, etc., who volunteer on a part-time basis. Each state and territory, as well as the District of Columbia, has its own National Guard. Army National Guard units are part of the U.S. Army. Air National Guard units are part of the United States Air Force. Guard members have a unique dual mission. Now listen to this part, folks. Guard members have a unique dual mission that requires them to swear an oath of allegiance to their state and to the federal government. In times of peace, the governor of each state commands its National Guard and can call it into action if needed. Guard members stand ready to battle fires, help communities deal with floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, and other crises. The second part of the National Guard's job is to defend America and respond to national emergencies. Well, the reason why I'm emphasizing all of this crap is because of the fact these leftist lunatic judges seem to think that Donald Trump can't control the National Guard. Guess what? Legally, he can. Here, the second part of the Guard's job is to defend America and respond to national emergencies. Respond to national emergencies. Anyway, during times of war or national need, which includes enforcing federal law when municipalities decide that they are not going to enforce federal law, even though the Constitution is the law of the land and the Supremacy Clause states that. I'm digressing from the book here, folks, if you haven't figured that out yet. But anyway, during times of war or national need, the president can call up the National Guard. Oh, he can. National need. Oh, like not having these cities and states enforce federal law, that would be a national need, especially when it comes to immigration, which is 100% in the federal government's responsibility. Wow, you know, we need to have some federal court judges actually read this crap. Anyway, in wartime, Guard members constitute a large portion of the U.S. fighting force. Guard personnel pour much time and energy into training. Units take part in efforts ranging from blood drives to the fight against terrorism. The motto of these citizen soldiers is always ready, always there. And that is tonight's On This Day in American History. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that there are people out there who don't understand and realize that, yes, the National Guard can operate domestically. It's allowed. It's allowed under the Insurrection Act. It's allowed in times of national need. That's part of the reason why the National Guard is different from the regular Army, as an example, or the regular Air Force, as an example. All right, well, now we're going to get into a subject where these idiots are also uneducated. And let me explain to you why and what I'm talking about. So here is a website of a law company that basically asks the question, oh, okay, so I'm being told I need to recognize, and rightfully so. So Ms. T of Texas, let me back out of this and let's just do this. Ms. T of Texas, one of my faithful Whiskey Warrior P1s, was apparently the first female entrant into the Texas National Guard unit stationed in Seguin, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Seguin, Texas in 1985. The first female to enter the Texas National Guard unit stationed in Seguin, Texas in 1985. Congratulations to Ms. T for that fantastic accomplishment and for that, Seguin. Seguin. I don't know. Gein. I don't. Anyway, yeah, Seguin. Anyway, yes. You know, it's bad enough that we up here in the Pacific Northwest have all kinds of Native American names that people can't pronounce. We apparently can't pronounce anyplace else either. Anyway, all right, folks. Like Juan Seguin, Seguin, I don't know. He's apparently from the Alamo, which is another thing that I probably wouldn't know. Anyway, all right. So apparently Ms. T kicks ass and takes names. Poor G. Anyway, all right, let's get back on track here. Let's go back here. So here is a law group that is dealing with immigration, okay, immigration law. And this one was written back in August 22nd of 2019. It's a post that says, "Do non-citizens have constitutional rights?" And this is the part that is the misnomer. And even they claim it's a misnomer. They claim that my stance is a misnomer. So it starts out here. There is a misconception that the U.S. Constitution applies only to U.S. citizens. That's the end of the statement. I don't know how you can say that there is a misconception that the U.S. Constitution applies only to U.S. citizens. Because here's the thing. Can I take the U.S. Constitution and go to Canada and apply it to Canadian citizens? No, I can't. Can I take it to Mexico and apply it to Mexican citizens? No, I can't. And in fact, there was a court case that dealt with a Mexican citizen who was extradited back to the United States by the DEA. And while he was down in Mexico, his domicile in Mexico was searched under the authority of the Mexican government by the the Drug Enforcement Administration. And he sued, saying that his Fourth Amendment rights were violated. And the Supreme Court basically said, dude, you're a citizen of another country. That's a domicile in another country. The Fourth Amendment doesn't apply. So I'm sorry. This idea, let's just throw this out there right now. The U.S. Constitution absolutely applies to U.S. citizens and only U.S. citizens. But that's not the only reason. That's not the only reason. And they continue in this post. They say, well, some passages and phrases in our laws explicitly state only citizens are afforded certain rights, such as the right to vote. Yeah, there's a reason for that. And I will explain in a minute. Then they continue and they say, when the terms resident or person is used instead of citizen, the rights and privileges afforded are extended to protect citizens and non-citizens alike. No, not exactly. And I'll explain. Now, they call in the 14th Amendment, which is where we're going to start here in just a few minutes. But they call in the protections under the 14th Amendment that ensure that no particular group is discriminated against unlawfully. Really? Really? We'll have to take a look at that. Now, they do suggest, or they do say right here, nowhere in the first 10 amendments of the Constitution is the word citizen. They are often written the right of the people. Well, that's a key clue. That's a key clue. Right of the people. See, they're going off the idea that the people and the intent of the right of the people means everybody. I contend that it doesn't. And I will explain. Now, they talk about the Bill of Rights protecting everybody, including undocumented immigrants, to exercise free speech, religion, assembly, and to be free from unlawful government interference. That's not exactly true. And I believe that the actual interpretation prior to the 20th century demonstrates that the U.S. Constitution was written for the people of the United States of America, the citizens of the United States of America. Period. Full stop. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Let me explain. Because this is a big one, folks. I mean, this is huge, because the idea of citizenship in and of itself is a question with regards to what is going on. So, of course, I go back and I take a look at the definitions of the words at the time. definition of words at the time that it was written. Now, the closest we can get is Webster's Dictionary, 1828. I have it right here, is people. The very first one, the first definition which comes up, is a body of persons who compose a community, town, city, or nation. We say the people of a town, the people of London or Paris, the English people in this sense. The word is not used in the plural, but it comprehends all classes of inhabitants considered as a collective body or any portion of the inhabitants of a city or country. Yeah. And then when you read down a little farther, you come to definition number 4, right here. So the people are persons of a particular class, meaning a part of a nation or community, as country people. So this kind of indicates that, all right, you could say that the people pretty much classify everybody, except there's only one problem. Back then, slaves were not considered people. A slave was not considered to be a person. A slave was considered to be property. So that throws this whole thing on this whole idea of, oh yeah, well, when they say the people, they meant everybody. No, they didn't. And in fact, you can even go to the preamble of our wonderful Constitution. The preamble itself clarifies this. The preamble starts with "we the people" and continues with the qualifier of the United States. So how can you be a person of the United States? It doesn't mean that you're just standing inside its borders, because if that were the case, then the slaves would automatically be considered people of the United States. The Indians that were there would be considered the people of the United States. That is where the definition changes. See, they're clarifying on this, we the people of the United States do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Now, that clearly states within the preamble that, hey, we are basically establishing this Constitution specifically for this nation. And in order to be a member of this nation, you must be a citizen. Now, what's the definition of citizen as of back in the 1828 days? Well, that was right here. A native or the native of a citizen, I'm just screwing all up. The native of a city or an inhabitant who enjoys the freedoms and privileges of the city in which he resides. The free man of a city, as distinguished from a foreigner or one not entitled to its franchises. So obviously, being a citizen is something different than just being a part of a person or the people. Now, when you put in the qualifier, we the people, meaning everybody who is a part of, owes an allegiance to the United States, which we all recognize is a political boundary. Okay? A political boundary. So in order to be a citizen, that means you adhere to the politics, the political boundary of the United States. See, the Indians didn't do that. And this kind of goes to the 14th Amendment, and I'll tie this in just a minute. But you'll notice too that there are some other things that are last listed here as a citizen. You have a townsman, a man of trade, not a gentleman, an inhabitant, a dweller of any city, town, or place. In the general sense, a native, and this is the key one right here. In a general sense, a native or permanent resident in a city or country, as the citizens of London or Philadelphia, the citizens of the United States. And then it goes on and it shows the next definition, which is in the United States, a person, native or naturalized, who has the privilege of exercising the elective franchise or the qualifications which enable him to vote for rulers and to purchase and hold real estate. See, back then, they didn't consider people who couldn't vote, who couldn't purchase and hold real estate. Those were considered non-citizens. Non-citizens were not necessarily made up of the people, because in order for you to be a part of government and interact with government, outside of a few cases, you must be a citizen. So these ideas that come in that say that, hey, the United States Constitution covers everybody that lived in the confines of the borders of the United States. No, that is not true. That is not true. And this actually even carried all the way up to the 14th Amendment. Okay? The 14th Amendment, as written in Section 1. And here, let me get back up here. All right. Section 1, 14th Amendment, right here. There is a difference. There is a difference. Section 1, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That's a key phrase. Not only to figure out whether or not there's birthright citizenship, which I'll show you here in just a minute. That's a bit of a fallacy, that just being born in the United States automatically makes you an American citizen. It continues, the 14th Amendment continues here, and it says, are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. So that's the definition. Okay? Now, here's where the separation comes in. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States. Of citizens of the United States. Now, privileges or immunities? Privileges. What do you think privileges would be? Maybe that would be like, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution? Because privileges and immunities, such as you are immune from unlawful searches and seizures, such as you are immune from, quartering soldiers in your place of residence. Which, again, keep in mind, a citizen is the only one back in the day. A citizen of the United States was the only one that could actually own property, own real estate. So again, if the citizen was the only one who could own real estate, that means that the citizen was the only one who was able to avoid having soldiers quartered during times of peace without their permission under Amendment 3. I could continue, But here it puts a colon in the middle of the sentence, which basically means that they are two separate ideas yet joined together. And it says right here, nor shall any state deprive any person. And again, any person. So there's a difference between a citizen and a person. Now, the person means that they are a free individual. They are a free man. Any person of life, liberty, or property. And considering this is the 14th, they are attempting to create the characterization or the classification of a person, including the newly freed slaves. Okay? So, in this particular case, even all the way up to the 14th Amendment, which was in 1866, 67, 68, somewhere in there, they basically are saying, hey, no state can enforce or make any law that shall abridge the privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person, any individual, because that's what a person is, not people, but person, any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, or deny to any person, not people, but person, in its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Now, in specificity with the 14th Amendment, okay, there was this thing, it's known as debate. That debate that occurred under the 14th Amendment happened during the, it happened during one of the congressional hearings. This is in the Senate. And as you can see here, here is Mr. Howard, who is the person presenting the amendment. And he says, the First Amendment is to Section 1. Because that's Section 1 I just read. He goes, the First Amendment is to Section 1, declaring all persons born in the United States, and here's the key, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. Now, he doesn't say, he says he's not proposing to say anything on that subject because the question of citizenship has been so fully discussed within the Senate that it doesn't need any further elucidation or discussion, in his opinion. And he goes, basically, he says this, and this is what he's saying, is that the amendment that he's offered is simply declaratory of what I regard as the law of the land already. That every person born within the limits of the United States and subject to their jurisdiction is by virtue of natural law and national law a citizen of the United States. Now, he qualifies that on this next one, which is where we get the idea of birthright citizenship just by being born within the United States incorrectly. Okay? Right here, it says, this will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, comma, aliens, comma, who belong to families of ambassadors or foreign ministers accredited to the government of the United States, but will include every other class of person. Persons. Not people, persons. So obviously they knew that there were foreigners that were here within the borders of the United States. And they wanted to ensure that the 14th Amendment did not apply to them. Well, the 14th Amendment was an amendment to, guess what? The United States Constitution. So the Constitution itself cannot apply to everybody equally if it's picked and choosed which parts apply. So, yeah. So there you go. And this, by the way, clears out the whole idea of birthright citizenship. Now, this congressional record, by the way, continues on. They actually had several discussions over things like the Chinese that were in California. They had discussions about different classes of people and so on and so forth, never once mentioning whether or not they were citizens. Because citizenship meant you had an allegiance, a literal allegiance to the Constitution and the government of the United States. Now, remember, this is a political allegiance. This has nothing to do with anything else. It is a political allegiance because the U.S. government is a political body. Anyway. So, now, I'm going to point something out. So, if we look at the 14th Amendment and we say, well, okay, it doesn't apply to everybody who happens to be here in the United States, which it doesn't. So then what other amendments could we possibly have? Because in terms of the Constitution of the United States, the word citizen shows up, but the first 10 amendments, which we consider to be the Bill of Rights, they're not always applied equally. In fact, many of them say the right of the people. In fact, the First Amendment doesn't even mention the people. It just says Congress shall make no law. Okay. Now, let's talk about the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment starts off with the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, meaning it never can be, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So, in other words, the right of the people, again, keep in mind, we the people of the United States, the right of the people, you could tag that with of the United States, to be secure in their persons, because, again, the Constitution is specifically about we the people of the United States. You have to have an political allegiance to the United States of America in order for this to work. That means you need to be a citizen, a naturalized citizen, or a citizen. Now, why do I bring up the Fourth Amendment? Plain and simple. Because guess what? Immigration law, which this is not a violation of the Fourth Amendment, folks, which if it was, if the United States Constitution applied to everyone within our borders equally, then the minute that somebody stepped onto the American soil, they would automatically be afforded the rights, privileges, and protections under the United States Constitution. Well, guess what? That is not the case. As you see right here, ICE.gov, and this is supported, by the way, supported by the Immigration and Naturalization Act. ICE does not need judicial warrants to make arrests. Wait. What? They can't, wait, what? They don't need judicial warrants to make arrests? Well, wait a minute, that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment, right? Nope. Which, if it was a violation of the Fourth Amendment, then that would mean that these people have the rights and privileges of the Fourth Amendment here on United States soil. Nope. That isn't the case. That isn't the case. And in fact, these searches can continue. A lot of people are like, oh, they can't do it within the, they have to be within the border. Well, no, that's actually been qualified now. These searches can actually be done and continued, okay, long past the border. And all a ICE agent really needs to have, or Border Patrol, all they really need to have is just basically, they have to have a reasonable suspicion, which is not rising to the level of probable cause to where you would need a warrant. Okay? They do not need warrants. Why do you think all of the cop shows and everything else, they say, we have a warrant for your arrest? Here's the thing. If an American citizen gets taken into custody, okay, and we all can be, everybody can be taken into custody. That's not a violation of your rights. But if you go in and you don't answer questions, okay, you don't answer questions, and they have nothing else on you, then you can basically, all you have to do is essentially say, am I being arrested? Am I being detained? If you're not being detained, you as an American citizen can walk away. An illegal alien can't. An alien under suspicion cannot just walk away from that. They have to stay in custody until things are resolved. Yeah. So, anyway, moving on from this, let's take a look at our wonderful Second Amendment. Yes, the Second Amendment. A lot of people want to tear this thing down, but it's been upheld by Keller, for an example, as a right of the people. Oh my gosh, right here. Right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The right of the people. Well, okay, so if the definition of the people is everybody who stands on U.S. soil, then that means you could have an illegal alien or an immigrant on a certain type of visa or certain types of visas. Everybody, pretty much, you wouldn't have to have any qualifiers, right? You wouldn't have to have it. It means everybody. The right of the people to keep and bear arms. Everybody can acquire a weapon here in the United States. Oh, yeah, no. Here. Right here. It shall be unlawful for any purpose. Shall be unlawful for any person. And this is our firearms laws, our federal firearms laws. It shall be unlawful for any person, right here, who being an alien is illegally or unlawfully in the United States, or except as in provided in subsection, and they list a bunch of things, who was admitted under a non-immigrant visa of the Immigration and Nationality Act. So, in other words, if you're not going to be here, you're coming as under a travel visa, or you're coming as, a non-immigrant visa, meaning you're only going to stay here for a certain period of time and then go home, guess what? You can't buy a firearm. You're not even allowed to have one. If you're illegal or unlawfully in the United States, you're not allowed to have them. So, if the Constitution and the term right of the people was to apply to every single person within the borders of the United States, then they should be able to buy firearms. They can't under federal law. So that would be a violation of their constitutional right to keep and bear arms. Nope. So, here we are again, folks. The Constitution, and I just gave 3 examples, 3 firm examples. See, and here's another one that actually would be, let's just say this one would be like a little logical, I think. The logical reason for having a separation or a definition of persons, people, citizens is because they are different classes. Now, the thing about it is that you can't sit here and tell me that when they say the right of the people, which, by the way, the people are the people of the United States. You can just add that to every single one of those. The right of the people of the United States, meaning the rights of the citizens of the United States. Now, keep in mind, the courts have not necessarily been this clear-cut on all of this. But I want to basically tell you that in the sense of the idea of having a weapon in particular, and I'm just using the Fourth Amendment, the Second Amendment, as options. You cannot buy a gun in particular under, and I just showed you, under 18 U.S.C. 922, Section G5. So even if you're like an overstay or a TPS violator or something along those lines, yes, you can't own a firearm. You cannot buy one. You can't own one. So how is it that the Second Amendment, being that it's the U.S. Constitution and the U.S. Constitution applies to everyone within our borders, how is it that they can't own a firearm? Well, it's pretty simple. The Constitution does not apply to everyone. It applies to citizens. Now, here's another point, case in point. Again, as I pointed out earlier, the original framers of the Constitution did not consider the Indians as a part of the United States of America because the Indians had an allegiance to their tribe. And it was believed by the framers and founders that we can't have the Indians be a part of the United States Constitution because of the fact that they don't swear an allegiance to the United States. This is the whole point, folks. See, being a part of the United States, being a citizen of the United States is much larger than just being born here. It is much larger than just being born within the border. This is much larger than all of this. And this is why I'm sitting here saying, hey, the Constitution. Oh, here's another part. If the Constitution, and I pointed this out to this idiot on Facebook, if the Constitution were to apply to everybody within the border, then why would we have to have a naturalization process? Why would we have to have a naturalization process to basically say, hey, you're a citizen? Why would we have to have that? Now, they would argue, well, only citizens can vote. And that is true. Only citizens can vote. But as of right now, under the definition of the Constitution, pretty much everybody who has American parents, at least one, is an American citizen. So there really isn't much of a difference as what it used to be back in the day. So to sit here and say that, oh, no, there's no difference. Today's definitions apply differently than last definitions. Well, yeah, because we've grown a lot since then. We've taken care of things like slavery. We've taken care of things like indentured servitude and things of that nature. But realistically, okay, there is a definition and there is a difference. The idea that the framers put together in the Constitution is, we, the people of the United States. And realistically, they did not want to bother carrying that phrase throughout the entire document. It was evident that it was covering the people of the United States, meaning that you had to be a citizen of the United States for it. Now, that being said, here is a section, because I love going to things like the Federalist to talk about this, but here is a section with regards to that. This is Madison writing, and he is talking about, in particular, the differences between the Articles of Confederation, which predated the Constitution of the United States and was seen as a disaster. And what he pointed out here is that the fourth article of the Confederation, they stated that free inhabitants of each of these states, paupers, vagabonds, fugitives from justice excepted. Now you can see already, they're basically saying, hey, paupers, vagabonds, fugitives from justice, those people are not allowed to be a part of this. And they say that shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of free citizens of several states, and the people of each state. Again, this is an affiliation situation. Yeah, they're defining free inhabitants, free citizens, the people of each state shall in every other enjoy all the privileges of trade and commerce, etc. And even he calls out there's a confusion of language here. He goes, why the term free inhabitants? Why the term free citizens in another article and people in another? What was meant by super adding to all privileges and immunities of free citizens? He's like, why are they saying all the privileges of trade and commerce? None of this can be easily determined, he said. It seems to be a construction scarcely avoidable, however, that those who come under the denomination of free inhabitants of a state, although not citizens of each state, are entitled, and he's complaining about this because he's basically saying, hey, if you're an inhabitant of a state, but not a citizen of a state, you're entitled in every other state to all the privileges that free citizens of the state, greater privileges than they may be entitled in their own state. And he goes, so it may be in the power of a particular state, or rather that every state is laid under a necessity, confer the rights of citizenship in other states upon any whom it may admit to such rights within itself. In other words, he's sitting here talking about saying the importance of getting a immigration and naturalization law. This is under Article 1, Section 8, that is common across all of the states. So this is federal government and the Congress that created immigration and naturalization laws. That's one of their duties. Now, if the Constitution were to apply to everyone, regardless, and as he points out, every free inhabitant of every single state, then why would there be necessarily a necessity for creating a rule of naturalization? Or creating the idea of citizens? What would be the point here? That would just end up being doublespeak. If the Constitution were to apply to every single solitary individual who steps foot within the borders of the United States. And see, this is part of the problem with our leftist friends. It's not that they're ignorant, it's that they know so much that isn't so. The founders did not intend on this. And by the way, he actually continues and talks in other Federalist papers. They talk about the Indians and making treaties and trades with the Indians because they did not consider them to be a part of the body politic known as the people of the United States. See, this is where the breakdown and the misunderstanding in the Constitution and all of its things that are going on that happen here. See, this is the breakdown of our understanding and where the left goes completely bonkers and wild and off kilter for this. All right, I'm going to take a break real quick here, and I want to talk to you about this absolutely fantastic elixir that I drink every single morning. No, it's not what's in my glass right now. I wish it were. No, what I'm talking about is coffee. And if you still haven't tried 1775 coffee, now is your shot. The 1775 starter kit just dropped, and there's a limited number of units available. In each unit, you're getting the bold dark roast that hits hard, smooth medium roast, and the Vitality Mushroom Coffee for clean energy and laser focus with no crash. All of these coffees are single origin, small batch, toxin-free, and mold-free. Plus, you're also getting a gold spoon clip because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. It's a frother. Sorry. It's a frother strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's opinions. Like you need help with that. You'll also be receiving a black 1775 tumbler. All of this is $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for just $99. This is for the ones that have been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble and wondering if it's actually worth it. Well, spoiler alert, it is. Go to 1775, those are numbers, 1775coffee.com /studio, STUDIO, and grab your starter kit before they're gone. That's 1775coffee.com / that's your question mark key on your keyboard, Studio, STUDIO, and grab your starter kit before they are out of here. You need bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. Go to 1775coffee.com / studio and get your starter kit today. Well, all of what I've been talking about has actually been an advocate and kind of back and forth, to be honest with you, even within the legal community, because there are still cases, just like with birthright citizenship and things, that are being misrepresented by a lot of the left in particular. But they are bouncing back and forth. Well, here is a fantastic write-up by Ben Crenshaw. And it goes, the U.S. Constitution and the American Citizen. Now, this is in the American Reformer. And he talks about citizenship and how important citizenship actually is. And he gives a reference to Patrick Henry. And he was horrified that the Constitution granted national political power to the people instead of the states. He was a little irritated at that. And he was like, hey, you know, why are we authorizing them to speak the language of we the people instead of we the states? The states are characteristics in the soul of the Confederation. If a state be not agents of this compact, it must be one great consolidated national government of the people of all the states. So, yeah. Now, keep in mind, we the people, in terms of our own identity, has come into play to say, hey, if you are we the people of the United States, that means you're an American citizen. You are an American. We've shortened that over time. We're an American. You're an American. No, you're an American citizen. You are we the people. So, yeah. Anyway, This is a great article. It kind of goes into a little bit about the recent case of Mahmoud Khalil, who was a pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas graduate student activist at Columbia University. He was apprehended by ICE on the orders of the State Department, and he was representative of the group Columbia University Apartheid Divest that presents itself as a continuation of the Vietnam anti-war movement, seeking liberation from Palestine from Israeli apartheid. And it was the same protest in the spring of 2024, which Hamilton Hall got broken into and was barricaded by the student. Now, while Khalil was involved in one protest, he mainly served as a spokesperson because he feared that his student visa might be revoked. Well, again, if he's here and the U.S. Constitution guarantees and applies completely and 100% to him, then why in the hell is he worried about leaving? Well, that would have to deal with the fact that we have immigration laws. We have naturalization laws. You break the law here, you're getting deported. I mean, this is just crazy. Now, after his arrest and detention, Khalil depicted himself as a political prisoner of the Trump administration and the target of Trump's executive order against anti-Semitism. U.S. District Judge Jesse Furman granted Khalil a writ of habeas corpus and ruled that Khalil could not be deported until the court assessed and ruled in his case. The government has judged Khalil to be a foreign threat and wants to deport him on the basis of the 1952 Immigration and Nationality Act, which allows the deportation of lawful residents. Oh, wait a minute. So under the rights of the Constitution, that basically means that I as a citizen can't be deported. Then why is it that he's a lawful resident, which, by the way, is another categorization that they use? He's a lawful resident, yet he's under deportation. Yeah. So I can't seem to understand where anybody would get the idea that the United States Constitution applies to everybody equally. Now, all of that being said, there actually is a dissertation from Harvard Law, and it's specifically calling out the meaning of the words "the people" in the Constitution. I'm not going to bore you with it necessarily. I highly encourage you to download it and read it because it brings to light a couple of inconsistencies, in particularly where places like the Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the First Amendment is applied to people who are not citizens of the United States or lawful permanent residents, if you want to throw in the other category. But yet it also calls out that there are things like the Second Amendment, the right to vote, things of that nature that basically are afforded only to citizens. So there seems to be and, by the way, too, when the Supreme Court has ruled in a couple of different cases throughout history, on one case they basically said that, oh yeah, you know, the word "the people" depends upon the context of the article that it's written in as to what the definition actually means. And then in another case, they basically said, that SCOTUS basically said, no, the term "the people" means the same across the entire document. Which I contend actually is true. Because again, going back to the preamble of the United States Constitution, it says, "We the people of the United States." Meaning that everything that follows this is in line with "we the people of the United States." If you are not a citizen of the United States, if you are not showing some sort of allegiance to the United States, the United States Constitution does not apply to you. You can be here as a resident. You can live here as a resident. Because back in the day when this was written, there were people that lived within the borders of the United States that were not subject to their laws, nor were they given the rights of those individuals. And if we look at this in a purely strict interpretation and constitutionally break it down, that is the only way that you should be interpreting this. And even with the convoluted back and forth and, some of these, like the right to free speech applies to everyone who's here. Well, that's because we, as the people of the United States, have afforded that to others because of the fact that we believe in ourselves that that is a human right. The right to speak freely, the right to practice your religion without governmental interference. But yet, when you start looking at things that become a little more particular and specific, like the right to keep and bear arms, which, by the way, that right, when you look at, and this paper goes into it, when you go back and look at the right to keep and bear arms, that actually didn't include every single person. That was taken from the idea of having able-bodied person who was not a foreigner, who was not having an allegiance to somebody else, such as the British back in the day, that they had a right to keep and bear arms. So this takes it even further into the context. Even prior to the Constitution of the United States, it was understood that the whole point of the right to keep and bear arms, which is the Second Amendment to the Constitution, that it was only afforded to people who actually had skin in the game, meaning that ones that owed an allegiance to the United States of America, meaning that you had a political tie to the United States of America, that you didn't have a political tie to other foreign influences. And in fact, John Jay and Alexander Hamilton in Federalist 1, 2, 3, and I think even 4, maybe even 5, they all were talking about foreign influence. Every single one of those was talking about foreign influence. So there is absolutely no way whatsoever, in any sense of the word, that a reasonable and logical conclusion cannot be brought to the idea that the United States Constitution, as it stands and is written today, as it stands, as it is written today, does not cover, or does not cover everybody. It only covers people with an allegiance to the United States, to the body politic, meaning the people of the United States, the body politic. Now, there's one more thing here that I got to show you. Oh, yeah, I already showed you this. Okay. So, yeah, there is no way, there is absolutely no way that the Constitution itself is for anybody but an American citizen. Because, and again, just keep in mind, as a general rule of thumb, because of our principles and values, we do tend to extend some of those constitutional rights and privileges to people who are not here. But let's be honest. If you're not an American citizen, you don't have necessarily the right to be quiet. the right to a speedy trial. You don't necessarily have the right to be secure in your person, and so on and so forth. I mean, folks, I don't know how else really to explain it. And what's sad is that these idiots are sitting here and they are like, yeah, it affords to everybody. Well, then why do we have limits then? In particular on the Second Amendment, why would we have a limit? Why would we have to clarify whether you're being a citizen of the United States or being just a person or the people of the United States? Why would you even say we the people of the United States? Giving some sort of a classification that it's the people who are adhering to or attached to or under the jurisdiction thereof the United States. Yeah. Because the Constitution was not initially designed to be covering every single person within our border. See, all of our founders knew that there were people here. There were people that were coming to the country that were not going to ever be Americans. And to sit here and say, hey, I'm an American just because I live here is not. That is not what the Constitution was intended for. But we, being a magnanimous people who believe in the principles and values of things like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that there are certain inalienable rights that are given to us by our Creator, given to all men, meaning all people by our Creator. But otherwise, there's no legal ramification that basically says that the United States Constitution applies to anybody but American citizens. To sit here with this fallacy, with this idea that, yes, it applies to everybody, even undocumented aliens, meaning illegal aliens, which, again, I keep saying, hey, how is it that if the U.S. Constitution applies here, why do they not have the liberty to stay here? If the U.S. Constitution were to apply to everyone, regardless of status, then why is it that we can deport them? Why wouldn't that be unconstitutional? It actually is not unconstitutional because of the fact that, again, the U.S. Constitution does not apply to every single individual person within our borders. It doesn't. It doesn't. And that's the point. It does not cover anything but American residents and citizens. It does not cover foreigners, does not cover aliens, does not cover ambassadors, just because they happen to be within our borders, lefties. That isn't how this works. That isn't how this has ever worked. And which, by the way, immigration and naturalization law and the courts have pretty much said that, hey, if you come here illegally and you've crossed the border, guess what? You don't actually physically exist in the United States, even though you may be standing in the United States. If you're an illegal alien and have crossed the border illegally, you're technically still at the border, which is why they can do all of these things like search an individual without a warrant. They can search an individual. They can detain an individual. They can arrest an individual, all without warrants. But yet, that is part of our Constitution. And again, the reason being is because they don't consider them to be here legally if they don't have a legal status. If there is no definition of a legal status, then just by standing here within our borders, they should automatically, according to the leftists, They should automatically be given all of the protections of the United States, yet our legal system doesn't and hasn't, because it doesn't apply. Doesn't apply to people who are not United States citizens or legal residents, which would be classified as a citizen, by the way. So there you go. All right, I've got about 10 minutes left. Let me just see what we have here. Oh, speaking of law and illegal aliens, well, Ma'am Danny, I might as well just kind of finish up with this. Here, Ma'am Danny apparently is suggesting that the New York Police Department may arrest ICE agents instead of illegal aliens. He was apparently on some kind of a show where he was essentially asked about this, and he's like, my focus is for the NYPD to not be assisting ICE in their immigration enforcement and to actually be following the policies of sanctuary city law. And I do believe, however, for that the law to have meaning, there has to be accountability for all of us. Well, I am so glad. I am so glad that you feel like you need accountability, Mr. Ma'am Danny, because I got a couple of laws for you. Here's law number, Title 8, U.S. Code 1324, which, by the way, is right here. Oh, my gosh. This covers sanctuary idiots right here. So, A1A3, knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that an alien has come to, entered, or remains in the United States in violation of law, conceals, harbors, or shields from detection, or attempts to conceal, harbor, or shield from detection such alien in any place, including any building, by any means or of transportation. Yeah, they shall be punished as provided in the following subparagraphs. Yeah, so, okay, so Ma'am Danny just violated the law because he knowing, he's like, hey, we're a sanctuary city. We knowingly encourage these people to come in. Why are our governors and our mayors and stuff, why are we not enforcing this law and taking these people down, arresting them? Why are we not doing this? I can't quite figure this out. Why is it that we're allowing them to basically get away with this stuff? Oh, and by the way, I also want to pull out my favorite, Title 18, Section 1111, which is impeding certain officers or employees. Oh, well, let's see. In general, anyone who forcibly assaults, intimidates, impedes, interferes while engaged in or on account of the performance of their official duties. So, whoever. Okay, NYPD, go ahead and try and block ICE from doing their job. You're impeding, opposing, resisting, intimidating, interfering. Yeah, okay. Yep, there you go. So, they're breaking the law. Right here. Ugh, geez, you people. I get so frustrated with these sanctuary city folks that sit here and think, oh yeah, we're not. Yeah, well, here's the problem: they're not being, the law is not being enforced. That's the problem. So, yeah. Anyway. By the way, too, just so you know, the Democrats in Congress have released a whole bunch of new photos of supposedly of Epstein in an attempt to smear Trump. Except there's only one problem. Out of 95,000 of these photos that got released, there were only a few of Trump. And one in particular that they keep running around. They're like showing this image of Trump surrounded by these women, by a lot of these women. Yeah, here it is, right here. So there's this image that was the one that was released today is the one below, where the Democrats went and put the redactions up, and they're like, oh, yeah, this is, let's just show you. This is exactly what it is. We're redacting the photo. Well, guess what? That same photo was already released 10 years ago. It was of everybody who was an adult. It was of everybody who was part of the, I don't know, Miss USA pageant or whatever that Trump owned at one point. And they were all adults. They were all over the age of 18. And yet the leftists sent this out thinking, oh, we're going to finally get them. Nope. And apparently as a part of that treasure trove, there were pictures of other folks. Like, Miss Universe. That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. T. But there were pictures of other folks like Bill Clinton, like Woody Allen, Richard Branson or whatever, the guy who owned Virgin Atlantic, and a bunch of others that were released. Not a single one of these 95,000 photos showed anything happening that was untoward nor criminal on the part of Trump. And so it's like, once again, folks, yeah, you guys are just, you're freaking drawing straws here. You're like trying to attack this guy, and he's not doing anything here. He's not doing anything. This is stupid. You guys are stupid. Yes, we know he had a relationship with him. Okay, big deal. You know, it's like, really? Yeah, okay. So he knew the guy. Big deal. He helped get him in Florida. It's like, come on, folks. This is part of the reason why the Biden administration didn't bother to do anything with it. This is why the DOJ, the Biden DOJ, didn't like all of a sudden release a whole bunch of crap, because they knew that nothing was wrong. You leftists, you're barking up the wrong effing tree. Again, trying to get Trump. You can't. You're not going to get him. Oh, and real quick, another botched gotcha by the Democrats. So I told you about Kristi Noem and, what was his name? I can't think of the guy's name. But anyway, going back and forth, Benny Thompson, that's it. So Kristi Noem and Benny Thompson going back and forth. Well, in that same meeting, that same congressional hearing, there was another representative from Massachusetts by the name of Seth Magaziner. And Seth was trying to catch Kristi Noem in this, I don't know, trying to get a gotcha out of it, where he said, have you ever deported a veteran? Meaning somebody who has served in the United States. And she answered, no, we have not. Well, he immediately got somebody on the phone who was a man, apparently, who had been deported. His name was Se Jun Park. He was a United States combat veteran who was shot twice. He earned the Purple Heart, trying to make him out to be some sort of a big hero, big veteran hero. And what ended up happening, though, is apparently the guy struggled with PTSD. He got arrested in the 1990s, some minor drug offenses, which, of course, immediately made him deportable because he didn't bother to try and get naturalized here in the United States. Well, Magaziner, of course, is sitting there and he's like, oh, would you thank him for his service and doing all this other stuff? Well, now we got a actual listing of the man's extensive criminal history. Let's see. He's got convictions for assault, possessing, manufacturing, or selling a dangerous weapon, carrying a loaded firearm in a public place, criminal possession of a controlled substance. In 2010, an immigration judge issued this guy an order of removal. Park's appeal to the Board of Immigration Appeals that same month was dismissed by the board in April of 2011. Now notice 2010, 2011. Those were all prior to Donald Trump being in office. And apparently, since he had no legal basis to remain in the U.S., and to avoid a final order of removal, Park was allowed to self-deport back to Korea. They weren't even in charge when this happened. Oh my God, these leftists, they are just, they're horrible. They don't tell you all the facts. They don't tell you all the truth. And that's because they don't want you to know the truth. They don't want you to know the facts. All right, folks, that is it for me for this evening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. And once you are signed up and signed in on Rumble, search up the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to get notified every time I go live. Also, too, don't forget on your way out to hit those thumbs up or thumbs downs, or in the case of 3 Chevy, the thumb sideways. Across all of my platforms, whether it's X, YouTube, Facebook, and, of course, the aforementioned Rumble. We will see you Monday night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your weekend, and good night, everybody.